Yeah. Hey, Betty.
Hello, Betty.
My entire day to do all of.
Taking a little bit of a deep breath.
No, I was about to say that. I'm getting my hair colored left and right. I don't sleep. I agree. I have aged. I know.
To be honest, stepping down from president, not doing it anymore, the commitment was to spend more time at work to make up for what I did. So if I don't work on the weekends on this, then
Hopefully the public is hearing all this, the sacrifice that we make. The board just met in executive session to consider matters regarding proposed, pending, or current litigation, the employment or appointment of a particular person or persons, and collective negotiations pursuant to Article 14 of the Civil Service Law, the Taylor Law. We are going to be starting tonight with our audit committee meeting. But I do want to note that we are down several trustees. This board is incredibly committed to always being present. This is very unusual that we only have 4 here tonight. As you know, there is 1 vacant seat, and our 2 other trustees, once the meeting was rescheduled from Thursday to Tuesday, had pre-existing obligations that made them unable to attend today. I will like to say that as a board, we always make sure that we are present. And the public only sees us at these, public board meetings. But the public should know that we all meet typically 2 to 3 times a week for other matters. So the fact that we are down a little light tonight is highly unusual. And this board has made enormous sacrifices as individuals in terms of their families and other professional obligations. So I just wanted to explain sort of the unprecedented nature of tonight. So Alan Yu is here. Alan, please come to the podium. We'd like to talk to you a little bit about our audit that you completed.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Bakari.
And I will tell you, you have like half an hour, 25 minutes.
That should be enough time. Good evening, members of the board, members of the audit committee, and members of the public. My name is Alan Yu. I am one of the audit partners of the firm Collin and Danowski, LLP. My firm has been appointed as the external auditors for the North Shore Central School District. The purpose of tonight's meeting is for me to go over the audit plan for the upcoming external audit of your district's financial statements for the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2024. I'd also like to take this opportunity to go over the federal single audit report that we have recently issued for the June 30th, 2023 fiscal year ends federal grant awards. You may remember from my previous presentation, as far as the federal single audit is concerned, for entities that receive and expend more than $750,000 in federal awards in one fiscal year, they are subject to what's known as the federal single audit report, which is a federal program compliance audit. And each year we have to evaluate the various federal grant awards that your school district has received and expended, and then rank them in terms of what we call risk assessment to determine the grants that would be considered a major program subject to federal single audit in a given fiscal year. We have completed that audit. The federal government allows for up to 9 months after the close of a fiscal year for the single audit to be completed, and we were timely in terms of the completion of that federal single audit. You should have already received the draft audit report, I think last week. And for the fiscal year ended June 30th, 2023, your district received and expended more than $2.3 million in federal awards. And so, based on our risk assessment, we identified the Education Stabilization Fund grants, which are the grant awards that were funded by the COVID money, as well as the FEMA reimbursements. So those two grants were deemed to be a major program for the June 30th, 2023 fiscal year single audit. I'm happy to report to you that we did not have any findings with regard to internal controls over the company's requirements, nor do we have findings related to the compliance requirements specific to those two federal awards. And in terms of the district determination to be a low-risk auditee, you once again qualified as a low-risk auditee. This is based upon look back at the last few years, as far as your financial statements audit, as well as the previous federal single audit. And since we did not have any material weaknesses in your financial statement audit, or any reportable findings as regards to federal single audit in the last few fiscal years, you once again qualified as a low-risk auditee. What that means is that it really affects the public in terms of how many federal awards have to be looked at and audited for audit purposes. A low-risk auditee only needs to have 20% of their federal awards in a given fiscal year to be single audited, as opposed to a non-low-risk auditee would have had 40% of their grant awards single audited. So certainly it's obviously a nice thing to continue to be designated as a low-risk auditee, so I congratulate your district. Okay. Any questions about the federal single audit report? Okay, thank you. Then I move on to the other handout, which is for the audit plan of the upcoming fiscal year's audit. There are certain required communications that I must have as the external auditors to those charged with governance. Of course, in this case, the audit committee and your board of education, plus the 2 community members who make up your district's audit committee. On page 1 of the handout, excuse me. Okay. First and foremost, I'd like to remind everybody the objectives of the external audit is for us to express our audit opinion about your financial statements as to whether or not they are prepared in accordance with GAAP, generally accepted accounting principles, and whether or not they're free from material misstatements. We also are required to issue a report about your district's internal control over financial reporting, as well as your district's compliance with laws and regulations. And these reports are required by the generally accepted government auditing standards issued by the U.S. government. Also, because your district has student clubs and they're being accounted for in what we call the Extra Classroom Activities Fund, the State Education Department Commission also requires your district to have an annual audit of those student club monies. And so we will be expressing an opinion about the financial statements of those extra classroom activity funds as well. And as I mentioned earlier, since you will be receiving and expending more than $750,000 in federal awards, once again in this current fiscal year, you will once again be subject to the federal single audit requirements. The second page of my handout, there are some limitations to the external audit, if you will, our disclaimer. But we have to. I have to communicate to you once again, even though you've all heard, these points in the past. It's important to remember that an external audit of the financial statements is designed to provide reasonable assurance, not absolute assurance, about whether or not the financial statements are free from material misstatements. It is not a forensic audit. It does not include a detailed examination of all of its transactions. We have to perform risk assessments by evaluating and testing your internal controls over the financial reporting process to help us identify the higher risk areas in terms of focusing our audit resources. We have to apply materiality in planning and testing the various account balances and the transactions that took place throughout the fiscal year. And it's also not designed to identify immaterial errors, or even fraud. Materiality is a key concept in external audit. It's driven by the size of your budget, okay, and so it could be a high number. And for your district, it is a high number. It's hundreds of thousands of dollars. But what that means is, as we perform our audit, and if we do come across adjustments that we feel necessary to be made, we will accumulate those adjustments and review those adjustments, those proposed adjustments with district management. And district management can then decide whether or not some or all of those adjustments are material enough that would warrant to be recorded. And as long as collectively the amount of journal entries declined do not exceed the materiality threshold, then we can still issue a clean audit opinion on your financial statements. And that's one of the concepts of materiality. But having said that, in the past, if we have come up with proposed audit adjustments that district management agreed with, they've always recorded all of them. Okay. On the next page, I've listed our auditors' responsibilities with regard to the external audit. We have to follow auditing standards issued by our profession, the AICPA, known as Generally Accepted Auditing Standards. The aforementioned government auditing standards issued by the USGAO, as well as the Single Audit Act and the OMB Office of Management, the Federal Office of Management and Budget issued uniform grant guidance. We are required to communicate significant matters identified during the audit to those charged with governance, as well as continue to maintain our independence and exercising due professional care in performing our audit. We enjoy a very good and cooperative working relationship with the district management. But at the end of the day, we report to the Board of Education, and we know the importance of independence. And if something material or significant is to come to our attention during the audit, we will report that to the Board of Education. On the next page, I've listed the district's responsibilities, district management's responsibilities, providing the required information for the financial statements and the disclosure, overseeing non-audit service that we are going to provide to your district. Specifically, the preparation of the financial statements itself is considered a non-audit service. And in order for us to continue to maintain our independence, even though we do assist the district in preparing your annual financial statements, that draft financial statements are being reviewed by your assistant superintendent for business and the district auditor in his office to make sure that they are in agreement with the numbers, the amounts, as well as the disclosures being included in the draft financial statements before we would bring it forward and meet with discuss those draft financial statements with the audit committee. Establishing and maintaining effective internal controls. Although we do review and test your internal controls over financial reporting, the objective of the audit engagement is not for us to opine or issue an opinion about the effectiveness of your internal controls. And so we won't be actually issuing an audit opinion about the internal controls. However, having said that, if there are internal control related deficiencies identified during our audit, we will bring those to your attention as well. But ultimately, it is district management's responsibilities to make sure that there are effective internal controls in place to ensure that your district complies with laws and regulations, and also to help deter and detect fraud, as well as human errors. Providing unrestricted access to district personnel, as well as financial records that we deem necessary and important for us to complete the audit. And at the conclusion of the audit, we will once again require your district superintendent as well as your assistant superintendent for business to sign what's called a management representation letter, basically taking ownership of the various disclosures that they've made and representations they've made to us throughout the course of the audit. The audit itself generally will be conducted in two phases. There's the initial audit planning, risk assessment, and testing of internal controls phase. This is where we would come in typically in May, and we'll start interviewing of district personnel to help us understand and document the current district procedures as well as internal controls. And also during this time, we will be reviewing internal audit reports, claim auditors' reports, or if there have been any state audits, we'll be reviewing those reports as well, and to help us identify potential weaknesses in procedures and internal control areas. We will also be reviewing board minutes to identify important and significant financial information so that we can make sure that when we come back for the second phase, the substantive testing phase of the audit, we will be focusing on those important and significant financial area as well. We will be testing your district's internal controls over multiple cycles, the payroll cycle, purchasing and cash disbursements, the accounting information systems, even the student clubs, the extra classroom activities, because cash is often involved, and cash being handled by individuals who are not part of a business office, and so that's an area that we will once again be focusing on with regard to internal controls over cash handling. We will also be testing the district's journal entries, approval, and as well as budgetary transfers, approval and recording procedures. The second phase of the audit, the substantive testing phase, will start once the district's books are effectively closed. Typically, that would be in mid to late summer, mid to late August. Some of the significant areas that we will be focusing on will include payroll expenditures and related liabilities, revenue recognition, year-end receivables, restricted reserves activities, making sure that if there were usage of reserves and funding of reserves, that they're properly authorized by the Board of Education. Testing of federal and state grant expenditures, as well as capital project expenditures. In addition to those areas, there are also reports that the district will be receiving from outside parties, and primarily these are pension reports that the district will be receiving from the teachers' retirement system and as well as the employee retirement system. In addition, there are actuarial reports for the other post-employment benefits, and these are the health insurance that the district is providing to current employees as well as retirees. The school district municipalities are required to have these annual actuarial reports in order for the financial statements to include the information. So once those reports become available, we will dive in and perform our audit procedures as well as testing of those reports to make sure that they're properly presented on the financial statements. After that substantive testing phase is completed, as I mentioned earlier, if we do have any proposed audit adjustments, we will review those with the business office and make sure that we are all in agreement. And then from that point on, we will start drafting the financial statements on your behalf. As I mentioned earlier, once the draft financial statements are ready for a review, after the review by the business office, they will then be provided to the audit committee, and I will come before you again in late fall to go over the results of the audit reports. And at that point, if there are any findings, control deficiencies related findings, we will also be reviewing those with you at that time. Okay. The last page of my handout for this current fiscal year, there is no significant new accounting standards unlike the last couple of years. Exactly. So really, GASB statement number 99, Omnibus 2022, is just issued to clarify certain provisions for statements that were recently issued and implemented. And so, nothing really significant that would affect your district's financial statements. Okay.
Yeah.
Any questions?
I will open up to questions. We're very lucky today. We have our two community members who are part of our audit committee, Roger Friedman and Andrew Spieler. If either of you have any questions, you may go first. So you got to talk into the...
I figured everybody could hear me. I don't have to press, right?
Oh, no.
It's on. I was hoping you were going to address GASB statement number 99. Thank you.
You're welcome.
But I actually, seriously, I thought I heard you say that you would not opine on internal controls. Did I get that right?
Yes.
But then it says, maybe I'm misunderstanding, it says evaluate and test key internal control areas.
Right.
So through the audit, if there were deficiencies in internal controls, that would become obvious. If you found something, and that would be discussed.
Right. So the difference there is, if you think in terms of the financial statements, the auditor's opinion about the financial statements would state that, in our opinion, your financial statements were prepared in accordance with GAAP and free from material misstatements. However, we're not issuing an opinion to say that, in our opinion, your internal control systems are functioning effectively without flaws. That's not the purpose. That's not one of the objectives of an external audit of your financial statements. Having said that, we do test the internal controls. We do review and test the internal controls to help us design our audit. If in internal controls over a particular cycle, after our review of the procedures and the existing controls and after our testing, we found that it's operating effectively, then it would allow us to determine the sample size for that particular area of the expenditures. But it is not for us to, the purpose was not to allow us to opine on the internal control system as a whole. But during the course of our testing, review and testing of the internal controls, if we came across exceptions or findings related to the internal control systems or the particular internal controls that point to certain breakdown or certain deficiencies, then we will report them in terms of in the format of a management letter, a separate letter identifying those findings. But the primary objective of the external audit is not to issue to offer assurance about the effectiveness of the internal control system itself. Yes. Yes. Correct. Yes.
Thank you, Roger.
Thank you, Alan, again for always such a thoughtful and concise presentation of a tremendous amount of material. We were speaking a little bit beforehand, so just as a little preview probably for your next meeting and presentation, do you foresee any issues coming up? I could think of two things that might be on the horizon, and one, anything that's lingering from COVID or COVID funding. It looks like it's only a small amount here in the financials, and then of course the tremendous change in interest rates. So as we mentioned, this will clearly affect the balance sheet liabilities and maybe the required contributions. Is this just sort of you have a sense if there's going to be any issues that we should be aware of and get ahead of?
No, only because as far as the pension plans reporting, you're required to utilize the reports that the two retirement systems, TRS and ERS, will provide. And in terms of their estimates of the pension liabilities, that would be dependent upon, among other things, interest rate, or discount rate that they use to do the actuarial calculations. But it also would involve measuring the respective pension plans' assets, their performance in the financial markets, and I think in terms of the reporting of the liability, it's quite possible that the liability may be a little lower than the past years, just simply because of how well lately the market has been performing. And also the higher interest rate could potentially lead to the retirement system using a higher discount rate, which then will result in a lower actuarial liability. So in terms of district's balance sheet, your proportionate share of the pension plan's liabilities, that could have that potential positive impact. And as far as the required contribution rates are concerned, certainly it is affected by the performance of their assets in the market. So, every year the district is completely at their mercy in terms of the required contribution rates. So, that's hard for me to predict. Okay. What was the upcoming increase in the ECR for the TRS, Jamie? Okay. Thank you. So it's similar to other employee benefits. It's out of the district's hands. You have no control over those increases in terms of the contribution rates, pension contribution rates, or even the health insurance premium.
Thank you. Oh, go ahead, Roger. Sure. Microphone. A man like you should be very comfortable with a microphone.
Sorry. It's been a very long day. I'm a little punch drunk. First of all, this is for all districts that it's out of their control.
Yes.
And also, is it not in our budget? Like, this is all calculated into our budget. There wouldn't be any surprise extra contribution.
It is. You already have the information. Your district already has the information as far as at least the TRS and ERS contribution rates. As far as health insurance premium, the rates do change. I think in January, and the district won't find out until October, November.
Maybe late November.
Right.
Some kind of accrual for that?
We build in, based on estimates, we built into the budget estimates of what we anticipated being at that point. So far, we've been pretty good, and the contribution rates we've already built in. They give us a estimate a couple of months ago, and then they get more defined as we get closer.
I don't know if this is an auditing issue necessarily, but if we talk about it a lot, health insurance, over 20% increase over the last 2 years.
A very brief follow-up to Andrew's question and your reply about the rate of return in the markets and how that affects TRS and ERS contribution. There's a lag there, isn't there? And is that about a 2-year lag? Is that right? Or
Yeah, it's just about 2-year lag. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So if the market's been increasing, supposed to watch the market, it's been increasing at a certain rate. But if for some reason, I'm not going to postulate why, suddenly rates of returns were in the opposite direction very quickly,
right,
we would still have about a 2-year time to prepare for that.
Yes.
I mean, a year,
yes, in terms of contribution rate, yes. But if we've seen that also over the last couple of years, as far as how that would affect the actuarial calculations from the retirement plans, and how that affect what your district's financial statements would look like, because you're required to put your proportionate share of whatever it is that the 2 retirement plans are reporting for their fiscal year end. We've seen, especially with the teachers' retirement system, they've gone from having more pension assets than liability, in which case it resulted in a net pension asset, to all of a sudden the next year, a liability, and then it rebounds up to an asset and then a liability again. So, and you have the joy of putting that, whatever it is, on your district overall government-wide financial statement, and one year you have an asset of a few $1 million, and next year you have that asset turned into a liability of tens of millions of dollars, and it makes for great reading, but it makes your head just spin like, okay, well, but it's directly correlated to the rate of return on their investments, as well as the discount rates that they would choose in estimating the actuarial liabilities.
Thank you
You're
for
welcome.
the presentation.
Thank you for your time and attention.
I do
Oh,
have
I'm
a
sorry.
question. Sorry, that was just my introduction to saying, but I do have a question.
Thank you.
I was particularly interested in the discussion on page 2 of the statement where you describe materiality. Perhaps I didn't hear it clearly enough in previous years, but today it really caught my ear. And I just wanted to bring the explanation of it to a slightly more primitive level for those of us who aren't accountants. I understood that it is a determination of the importance of an identified deficiency based on essentially its dollar value. Is that correct?
Right. That's correct.
Okay. So you said that in our case, materiality can be determined. It has a threshold of hundreds of thousands of dollars on a budget that is as big as ours.
Right.
But at some point, it is actually a decision that is made by the district in consultation with you. No.
No.
So materiality is it's a very straightforward thing. If it's above a certain threshold, it's material, and if it's below, it's immaterial.
Right, exactly, and it's actually no big secrets, because it's the AICPA, our profession that help us. There's a formula involved in determining what a materiality for a particular funded, let's say general fund, obviously your biggest fund with a significant amount of budget, and the higher that number, the higher the materiality level. And as I mentioned also earlier on in my presentation, it is not a forensic audit, right? We have to, based on risk assessment, as well as the size of certain accounts. Okay, so the materiality level will help us determine what we can, in a given fiscal year's audit, based on a number of factors. If the variances from year to year is very low, not high, and if the account balances were not material, then an external auditors could skip certain accounts without testing them, and would still have confidence that the financial statements are material, are fairly stated.
Okay, great, thank you.
You're
Just wanted
welcome.
to make sure I understood that.
Right, any other questions? All right, thank you, Alan. We appreciate
Welcome.
you coming.
Thank you.
All right. We will now open up the meeting, our official meeting. If you can all rise and stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you, Andrew and Roger. For sure. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Ellen.
I'd like to, we're going to look at the approval of minutes for April 4th. Are there any questions, comments, changes? Hearing none, I'll accept the minutes as is. I see our representative from the SGL. Go ahead, you can have a seat. Welcome, Paul. You're up right now. Tell us what you got.
Well, so Andrew, just before we go, I did. Sorry.
Oh, go ahead, go. Do you have a question?
I did a question about the minutes while Paul's getting seated. Hi, Paul. So I hadn't missed a meeting myself in a very long time,
Yeah.
but I did this one. So I watched and read the meeting minutes many times. I also was able to watch the tribute on the video to Trustee Russo. It was a really it was a nice presentation. I appreciated the fact that I could contribute. On the summary of the budget discussion, I just wanted to say, Betty, the way you summarized it, and again, I watched it, but the way you summarized it was so strong. I just would suggest that it could be the basis of what the district could use to help kind of publicize some information that we talked about. I think it's got it can really be a good framework for the discussion that we had in the words you chose, and the way you were able to distill a very thorough but not short conversation into something that was very succinct. So I just wanted to mention that in the minutes. Thank you,
Thank
Betty.
you. Thank you. All right. Sounds good. Paul.
Oh, we're good? Okay. Good evening. So the SGO was now running elections for officers for the 2024 and 2025 school year. There are contested races for all SGO officer positions. The current juniors are going to elect their officers for their senior year. In that race, there are contested races for the vice president and the treasurer. We held the SGO election last Tuesday, but there were some inconsistencies in who thought they could vote and who was able to watch the campaign videos. So we emailed a presentation with links to all the campaign videos to all the students, and we are redoing the voting tomorrow, along with the election for next year's senior class officers. The SGO is also working with Mr. Wenkel to prepare for the Spring Acoustic Cafe, which would be a barbecue in the high school courtyard. We have been putting up posters to encourage students to sign up to perform. The freshman class, led by Jolie Neal, is having a Rochambeau, or rock, paper, scissors tournament / fundraiser this week. They will be selling necklaces and having students challenge others to rock, paper, scissors, and whoever wins will get the necklace of the loser. The person with the most necklaces at the end of 2 days will win a gift card. The money collected will support the freshman class and a charity chosen by the freshmen. The SGO also discussed reviewing the SGO and class constitutions that were written 20 years ago to make amendments to align them with current school conditions. Now for news around the school, in terms of science features, we had 19 freshmen who presented in the Long Island Science Congress this week. This is the latest competition that follows Caitlin Ho's winning LISEF presentation that centered to the International Science and Engineering Fair and Eli Wesley Jones' third place in round 2 of LISEF. In addition, there were 7 students who advanced to round 2 of the NYSSEF. There are 10 sophomores conducting lab-level research with fruit flies in the small research room. They will present their research at a regional fair in June. Some of the science research students have approached the SGO with concerns about how there's no water in the research room to wash their hands or equipment. There are also concerns from students excuse me, who are working with materials that need to be manipulated in a fume hood. The lack of a hood in the science research room limits what kind of projects students can safely carry out. The environmental club is planning to plant a tree in the courtyard, and about 2 weekends ago, the senior fashion show wowed the audience with their stunning outfits. And lastly, for our robotics team, the RoboGym Robotics Team 3950 is currently on the way to Houston to compete in the World Championships for robotics.
Thank you so much. That's pretty amazing, huh? All right. Tell everyone congratulations. All right. Thank you. Dr. Z, your report?
Thank you, Paul. That was excellent. Super well done. And I do want to talk more about the science research lab. That's really important to me and Dr. Smythe and all of the teachers. So look forward to that. We have so many events coming up. We're getting into spring break and all of our concerts, and we're really easing into concert season. Last Wednesday, we had our middle school, high school jazz concert, which was excellent. And this Wednesday, tomorrow, we have our high school choral concert. And then pretty much after the April break next week, we will have every night a concert. So we look forward to this special time of year. But tomorrow night's choral concert at the high school at 7 p.m. in the high school theater. We hope you join us. We have a new event that wasn't on the calendar that we have planned with CASA, Mr. Doherty, our partners at LICAD, a CASA town hall. Every couple of years, we give a survey to our high school students and our middle school students called the Bach Harrison, and that measures students' interactions and decisions with substances, with their situation in school, and other decisions that they make and things that are influencing them. So it's a very important town hall meeting. We'll talk about that survey. And it is a town hall, so we'll have an opportunity to hear from folks who join us in person right here at North Shore Middle School in the library. But we will also be streaming it on the same stream that we're using for our board meeting. So we hope you join us. We will be sending out a link where you can email questions, and it's an interactive forum. So I've sent out a reminder about the event. I'm going to send out another reminder tomorrow and on Thursday. It's this Thursday at 7 p.m. North Shore Middle School, or live on the board live stream. Very exciting news. At our last board meeting, we mentioned how we had 2 Nassau County National History Day winners from North Shore who advanced to the state finals in Oneonta, New York. I'm looking at Trustee Mosca. And they are now, both of them, advancing to the true National History Day in Washington, D.C. And that is Ann Kelly and Meta Polio, who are headed to the finals in Washington, D.C. So congratulations, Ann and Meta, who placed very high in the state finals. So thank you. Like Paul mentioned, our robotics team, it is amazing how well they have done. And Dr. Smythe and I had a surprise visit from Mr. Bridgewood, who's one of the advisors with Mr. Peroni, and really picked his brain about the process. And he explained to us how you're writing code for the robot to do things automatically. It reminded me almost of like the driverless cars that you're seeing now developed in Silicon Valley, and the writing of the code and the team leadership and the whole process. And I did think it was ironic. I didn't realize this until I saw Mr. Bridgewood, that they defeated Stuyvesant High School in the New York City finals to advance to the national finals. We all know that Mr. Contreras was the principal of Stuyvesant. Him and I were talking about that today. But Stuyvesant is one of the strongest teams. So we have this really strong team, but just such a great example of the collaboration, the dedication. Students be here 9 and 10 o'clock at night, with their advisors. So congratulations to our robotics team. They're local celebrities. They were on Channel 7 News last week, and they are en route. They're going to begin their work in Houston at the National Championship on the 17th. So we wish you the best of luck, and we'll keep you updated. The Athletics Advisory Committee, I just wanted to mention, because I mentioned our last meeting, did a walkthrough of fields on the nicest day of the year until yesterday, last Tuesday. And we walked through the high school fields, we walked through the middle school fields, and we went to Glenwood Landing, which has the largest elementary athletic complex. And we had great conversations. That will really inform our future discussions about capital improvements. In addition to what Mr. Parakis over here just mentioned about science research facilities, this is the information that we need to know. And we're continuing to work on getting the board more fine-grained details, a follow-up to our January presentation on buildings and grounds. Just moving to more financial news now, as this evening is the night where the board will discuss the adoption of the 2024-2025 budget. We've all been waiting on bated breath, and when I say all, I mean every single school district in New York State, waiting on bated breath for New York State to settle the budget and for districts to get final state aid run numbers. We're getting closer, but we're not there yet. All school districts in New York State are still waiting for those final state aid numbers. But the governor, the assembly, and the state senate did come to a conceptual agreement that Governor Hochul announced last evening. And what we're getting from this conceptual information is that Save Harmless, which was questioned in that initial executive budget proposal, will be reinstated, meaning that districts will not receive less financial aid than they did in a prior year. We also know that the inflation factor that was used in those initial executive state aid numbers in January will be raised. We don't know by how much. So most districts are adopting their budgets either tonight or on Thursday. So we're all having to move forward without having those final state aid numbers. We are very confident that the numbers would be either the same or slightly higher. And we can make adjustments to revenues even after the budget is adopted. So we'll keep certainly the board and the community updated on those state aid numbers, which we should hopefully have by Thursday or Friday. I say
That's what they're saying. I think their last session is Thursday, so by Friday we should have
these
That
state
those
aid
numbers out.
conversations are very much like our construction conversations. Another 2 weeks. And I just do want to take a moment. Thank you, Mr. Pappas, just to talk about the budget highlights very quickly. We'll have an opportunity, just as a highlight to where we are with our budget. The North Shore Central School District has one of the lowest budget increases in the proposed draft 2024-25 budget. In Nassau County, despite losing over $7 million in tax revenue from LIPA over the last couple of years, the North Shore CSD has cut $5.2 million in last year's budget, the budget we're living in right now, and the budget proposed for next year, including 41 positions. So in 2 years, a cut of $5.2 million, and that's 41 positions from all units. The North Shore Central School District has currently a lower tax rate than East Williston, Farmingdale, Jericho, Levittown, Massapequa, Plainview, Rockville Center, Roslyn, Syosset, and many other school districts who do not have a LIPA issue. And that's the tax rate per $100,000 value of home. What are the outcomes? We will have a budget vote and a board trustee vote on May 21st. That budget could either pass or fail. If that budget did fail, the board could make a decision to have a revote. This happened in 2004, and the district at the time put up the same exact budget, and it did not pass a second time, and the district had to go to contingency. I think I mentioned last time in my presentation that I found the letter that Dr. Melnick wrote when that happened, and we would likely have to make some kind of change if the budget went down on the first vote. Some of those changes could include, and we don't know, that would be a matter for discussion, public discussion, reduction in classroom sections and teachers even more than what we've already done, increases in class sizes at all levels, reductions in certain programs, including enrichment, clubs, fine and performing arts, sports teams, and new electives. The budget that the administration has proposed to the board does include some cuts, $2.5 million in cuts to be exact, and we will see some slight increases in class sizes. If the budget did not pass, we would likely see more cuts. And finally, if the budget failed on a second vote, we would need to go to contingency budget, and that's where the state would call more of the shots in terms of what we can spend on and cannot spend on. And that's where we would see more massive cuts, totaling $3.5 million in addition, for a total of $6 million in cuts. And that is because we would have to have with a contingency budget a 0% tax levy, 0% tax levy increase versus the current budget. That could be 20 to 30 teachers and or the elimination of certain athletics, music, arts, enrichment, and extracurricular programs. That could mean 6 to 9 elementary class sections. It could mean cutting electives, cutting field trips, and we would have to eliminate community education and the public use of fields. So those are all scenarios that we could see given those different outcomes. Thank you.
Thank you for laying that out for all of us. This is sort of an unusual meeting tonight because we don't have any presentations. We sort of combine two meetings, right? Two short meetings. So it's a little bit unusual, right? With no presentations. So let's keep going. We have a couple of actions here that we need to take action. I'm going to do 7, 8, and 9, combine them. The approval of budget transfers, the approval of claims audit report from March 2024, and the acceptance of the federal single audit. Do I have a motion?
Motion.
Second. Thank you. Questions, comments?
I mean, it's sandwiched, but we must say that the claims audit report is as good as it possibly can be with 0 exceptions. Congratulations to Jamie and the whole office.
Oh, Paul, you can go home. Yeah.
Thank you, Paul.
Yeah, we really appreciate it. All right. Any other questions or comments?
The only question I have was just that if the public is curious about the audit meeting that you may have caught the end of, the federal single claims audit, federal single audit that we just discussed is available on board docs for everyone who wants to see it. So,
As is most of the things that we
Yeah.
talk about. Yeah. Okay. All in favor? Okay. Thank you. Action 10 tonight, we're doing the Nassau BOCES Board of Education election. So, Betty, you want to explain a little bit about how this goes down?
So first, you're going to be voting on the trustee for the BOCES Board of Education. So you can vote for up to 3, no more than 3, and no more than 1 vote for each candidate. So you vote as a board. You can not vote individually. So the board votes on up to 3 candidates. So you do that first. You make a motion, a second, on the 3 candidates. On 1 motion, 1 second for the 3 or up to 3. You don't have to vote for 3.
Okay.
So do that first.
President Colasiova.
I would like to make a motion that our 3 votes go to Susan Bergtraum, Martin Kay, and Michael Weineck.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Any questions or comments? We do that, or we can have questions and comments. Okay. Do you want to say anything?
The reason I put those, I mean, all 6 candidates look very worthwhile and accomplished. Those 3 are the incumbents, and they have quite a lot of experience and were nominated by many, many school districts.
All right, thank you. All right, all in favor? Okay, thank you. We're now going to move to action 11, which is the Nassau BOCES Administrative Operations Budget Vote. Do you want to explain this one, Betty?
Each year, all the districts in Nassau County have to vote on the same day, other than I believe it's a city, a small city school district. Everyone has to vote on the same day. It has to be on this day. The BOCES chooses the day. It has to be this day that you all have to vote, and it's on the administrative operations budget, which we're all a component district of, school district of. So you either vote yes or you vote no, and again, it's 1 vote from the district.
We don't need a motion for this.
You do.
Oh, you do? Okay.
You need a motion and a second, and then it's all in favor. It's either a yes
Okay.
or it's a no.
All right, thank you, Betty. Is there a motion? Okay, second. Okay, excellent. All in favor? Okay, questions, comments?
questions, comments, sorry. I just wanted to ask Betty, I'm prepared to vote yes for this myself, but just curious, there are four of us here. So if we don't have four of us voting yes, we will essentially be a no vote or we'll be an abstention.
Be a no vote.
As I said, I'm voting yes, so I'll see what my fellow trustees do in a second.
Cliffhanger. All in favor?
Oh my gosh.
Okay, it's wild. Okay. We're going to move to action 12. This is a very unusual night. We have a lot of atypical things on the agenda. Today, the big thing, the big excitement is the adoption of the 20. I'll read it and then I guess we'll do the motion. Be it resolved that the Board of Education of the North Shore Central School District hereby adopts the proposed budget in the amount of $122,648,909 for the 2024-2025 school year for submission to the qualified voters of the school district at the annual election to be held on May 21st, 2024. Is there a motion? Questions, comments?
Am I raising my hand or am I?
I don't know. Does anyone want to say anything or no?
Yeah, I do, but
Go ahead.
I'll go first.
Go for it, sure.
I just want to say that I do hope that the residents of our district are paying attention. This was a very difficult year for budgeting. And with meticulous financial planning, by thinking out of the box and being extremely strategic, this budget maintains our programs and keeps North Shore, while losing $2.4 million because of the LIPA situation, facing the loss of $750,000 in grant money, and an increase of mandatory expenses of $4.35 million. We still have the second lowest budget-to-budget increase in Nassau County at 1.9%. That is a testament to the many cuts this administration has made over the past 2 years. Over the past 2 years, our administration has found over $5 million in savings and has eliminated 41 positions. But these cuts have been so strategic and so precise that most of our students haven't felt any shifts in the quality of their education or their experience here. With this proposed budget, hopefully next year, they will not be impacted by the changes again. If we had to go to a contingency budget, an additional $3.5 million in cuts would have to be made, and that would require cutting an additional 30 teachers, extracurricular activities, athletic programs, all the things that Dr. Z mentioned in his report. There is a reason our tax cap is 5.63%. That calculation is there to protect our district and ensure we have the funds needed to keep our district running. But our administration is so concerned not only about our students, but also about our taxpayers, that they did everything in their power to keep the tax cap as low as possible. A 3.96% tax cap represents $2.5 million in cuts. We are not gaining anything. We are cutting while trying to maintain our award-winning schools. We will now have 3 years to figure out how to maintain these schools before seeing another potentially devastating loss of revenue. And I really hope this community will come together and advocate for our schools, to the county, to the state, so that we can ensure that we don't lose an additional $8.4 million of LIPA revenue in the 27-28 year. So I am proud to wholeheartedly support this budget, and I sincerely thank the administration for your tireless work in keeping this district top ranked in New York State while figuring out how to turn an initial $7.5 million deficit this year into the second lowest budget increase in Nassau County. Thank you. Maria.
Thank you. We get to speak as trustees, every couple of weeks, and we are very careful and thoughtful and work very, very hard to be sure that we are taking care of every member of our community in speaking as trustees, in acting as trustees. But we also don't stop being parents when we're up here, or parents of graduates, or parents of children that are still to come into our system, or grandparents. Um, so I feel that I'm wearing both hats tonight. I've listened. I won't repeat the numbers that you've heard over and over and over again, although they are sobering. But in many ways, especially coming off the weekend I've just had as a parent, they are also testament to how much we do with what we have. I was privileged to be part of the National History Day events this weekend, and to see the two students who represented our school both, to have 100% success. We were 2 for 2. It was an amazing thing, especially given that walking around that exhibit hall, looking at the work of the other incredible regional winners who had advanced to the state level, there was an interesting anomaly that we noticed from another high performing Long Island school that we often compare ourselves to, and in some ways look up to and admire, where 3 students at both junior and senior level had exhibits that were virtually identical in color scheme, design, type of printing. It was remarkably formulaic. They were good. They were excellent. The research was solid, but to me, it really pointed out. It really brought home the value of the authentic learning that we promote. And I couldn't resist mentioning it tonight because I think it is such a shining example of what we do with our community's resources, how we spend them, and how they actually have an effect on specific students. These are the kids going to the science fairs, the RoboGym winners, the National History Day winners. These are our athletes on the field, our amazing theater department and our arts department kids, music everywhere. That dance symposium that covered every discipline within the arts so beautifully. These are our future. So I think it is an honor, frankly, to support this effort that our administrators have made. We have our so-called 2% tax cap is actually 5.6 blah blah blah. We have come nowhere near that at 3.96, and we are still doing amazing work. And I'm deeply grateful to you for this as both parent and trustee, and it is my pleasure to recommend that our community votes for this budget.
Thank you, my fellow trustees. Thank you, President McCary, for giving me this opportunity to share some thoughts about this budget adoption for 24-25. So I'm going to talk a little bit more from my perspective in the history of being here and sort of some of the issues I think that are facing us. We all know that there is a chasm in our community. I think it needs to be acknowledged as we head into yet another budget vote season. But at the same time, addressing it directly, to me, can have the unintended consequence of dividing people into camps, which widens that chasm. And that's really the opposite of what I've tried to do as a trustee. And I think it's what a handful of people who are leading that movement to divide us want us to do. People in other districts, people who live in other districts, most of whom, as was said, pay higher school taxes than we do, don't really understand why our beautiful, safe community with these universally acclaimed schools, high-performing, distinguished arts programs, successful sports teams, the high-achieving special ed approach, the nationally recognized robotics science research key clubs, the #1 highest graduation rate in Nassau County, which benefits every child, regardless of their post-high school path, which is what we claim to do and are clearly succeeding at. why we consistently have the closest budget vote margins on Long Island year after year. Part of it is the evaporation of LIPA's contribution to our tax base. That is something unique to North Shore. The quote unquote discount residential taxpayers have enjoyed for decades is a lot less than it used to be. We still pay less than our neighboring communities, but as has been said on these presentations, our share of the tax burden as residents has gone from 53% to 84% as a result of LIPA's reduced revenue contribution. That's not a mirage. It's very real, and it means a lot to our taxpayers, from seniors to young adults hoping to make a life here, and really everyone in between. People who watch this administration and the board know how we've prioritized managing that revenue loss, and our efforts to bring people into this process through committees like Budget Forum, Revenue Generation, Legislative Action, and more to ease that transition. There's been a push from this board and members of the community to conduct this year an independent budget review, which I thought was a great example of residents from across the budget voting spectrum to come together and voice a desire for an external perspective on why our costs per students were so high compared with many neighboring districts. And I really want to commend the board for hearing these voices and the administration for acting on it. Thank you. The report showed that the main causes were the marginal effect of our community school approach, with its 3 elementary school buildings spread out across the district, our broad array of curricular and extracurricular offerings, and an outsized special ed population that's largely integrated into our general ed program. Our teacher pay, our administrative costs, and our other operational obligations were very much on par with our neighbors, regardless of the overall cost per student. If we had a couple hundred more kids in our schools, which we very well may when the golf courses, when Lundy property, and the other developments in the works are all completed, we'd be on par. You're just changing the denominator. It's a nice thing about making prepared remarks is you get to look in advance which one's the numerator, which one's the denominator. We all know how strong the demand is for homes in North Shore, so when they build those things, people are going to come. The independent reviewer shared how impressed he was by our schools, that we should be proud of what we've built here, and found nothing mismanaged or inappropriate in our approach to education. He concluded by offering choices available to us if we as a community wanted to drastically cut costs now, such as closing an elementary school or adopting the Princeton model of grouping students by age in each building, rather than by home address. If one building is K1, one building is 2-3, etc. The operative word he used was choices. It's the choices that have been made, that have been acted upon by our community, that have made these North Shore schools what they are today. And we can always opt for a very different set of choices. That's what we've been discussing here. And as what's been shared openly with the community at both the initial public presentation and all the other stops, Dr. Z asked at the community what makes us forum that he held. That may not be what you've heard from specific individuals who are leading the crusade to defund our schools. Nuance doesn't really fit that narrative, nor do the very real proposed cuts in this 24-25 budget across all operational departments, the lost teaching and other staff positions, or the significant reduction in our administrative unit last year, as my other trustees mentioned. You'll hear nothing about making these cuts as surgically and thoughtful as possible for minimal student impact. I personally don't think that prioritizing student experience is a shortcoming as an approach to budgeting. I don't think that indiscriminate machete-style budget cuts without regard to what that means for kids is in any child's best interest. That said, as I started, I'm not going to allow them to turn this into an us versus them, neighbor versus neighbor, because the budget we're about to adopt and hand over to the community to have their say at the ballot box comes from a position of compromise and balance. It should unite people in recognizing what we all believe, which is that the children of this district today deserve the same strong education that the children of yesterday got and that we want to preserve for the children of tomorrow. It recognizes these fiscally challenging times. The LIPA payments have been slashed. Inflation has hit everyone's wallet. And that's why the administration is recommending the tough cuts to keep the budget increases among the lowest in Nassau County, which results in a projected tax levy about, according to my numbers, which I believe are correct, not my numbers, are the public numbers, about $1.5 million under the maximum from what we can go without needing the 60% supermajority override. I've certainly seen it out there, and I'm sure you have too, that we just automatically rubber stamp raises to the max. We're leaving $1.5 million on the table this year that would not only help us this year to preserve positions, but would set us up for future ability to deal with what could be coming down the road in 27, 28. I have argued from this dais that I'd have liked us to keep a little more in reserves, an inch closer to the cap. That's been my position. The cuts that have been made are sound and necessary, and I'm not quibbling with those. But the use of reserves is what concerns me and what has concerned me. As I've said here publicly, we have one of the best school districts on Long Island, delivering a unique and successful North Shore journey. As a business owner for over 20 years, getting close to 30, through many challenges, I know that the best offerings are rarely the cheapest or the most expensive. What makes something the best is the value that it provides. That should be our barometer as taxpayers and voters. Value, what we get for our tax dollars. And I don't know that a district with some of the highest rankings of any community on Long Island needs to have the second lowest budget increase of every district, especially when we have additional cliffs ahead of us. Our district faces the same inflationary pressures that the other districts do, and that, of course, all individuals and families are feeling. Healthcare, non-discretionary obligations are the biggest pieces of our budget puzzle. Our residents are still paying taxes at far lower rates based on home value than almost all of our neighbors. And while I don't like paying taxes more than anyone else, especially I just filed my taxes yesterday, and the SALT reduction's gone. There are just a lot of pressures on individual taxpayers. I also know the value we get for our tax dollars here in North Shore is superb. That said, I made my case throughout this process while listening to the points and perspectives of my fellow trustees, those present, those who aren't here tonight, and certainly Trustee Russo, who recently left this board. The discussions and respectful disagreements that all 7 of us have had as the elected representatives of North Shore have been the epitome of open, transparent government, which our great community deserves. Openness to other ideas is necessary in reaching balanced, productive decisions. I understand the pressure the community is experiencing, and I respect the prevailing opinion that going higher on the budget and/or projected tax levy would jeopardize its passage. So I've arrived at a point of comfort, deferring to my fellow trustees and the truly excellent work of Chris, Jamie, and Carol that they've done to thread the needle in balancing the internal pressures on our schools with those of the taxpaying community and presenting this fiscally prudent budget. It makes substantial cuts and it holds expenses tight while maintaining all that we as a community have invested for generations in our schools. I want to thank you all for the transparent and public process, for the huge commitment, scores of hours, reading, analyzing, discussing, debating, listening to one another. Thank you for taking great pains to barnstorm the community and listen to people's needs, priorities, and concerns. Those sessions have been real and they have been frank. They've opened my eyes to many perspectives. And although I wish more people watched, listened, and participated, I think the number's increasing for sure. Budget meetings have been larger this year. I see more people engaged in thoughtful and informed dialogue. And I really look forward to a productive community conversation about this budget leading up to the vote on Tuesday, May 21st. Thank you.
Thank you. So it's funny. I think of myself as a very stoic person, not getting emotionally frequently, but when it comes to school board, I find that I am often very emotional. And so listening to all of you, it has happened again. And I do think in part it's because I was born and raised here. I'm a graduate of the district. It means a lot to me. And I find myself now as a parent wanting to protect this place. And so I just want to say tonight that I am so proud of all of the stakeholders in this district. I am so proud of Chris, Carol, and Jamie for allowing ample opportunity for everyone who is connected to North Shore to help shape this budget. I am so proud of all of the community members who came out and gave advice, asked questions, offered constructive feedback. it really helped us understand how different, the different perspectives in our community. I was so proud of how many more people participated this year, how constructive and civil the participation was, how I was really struck by how this year you could see the effects of our like efforts to be transparent, to increase awareness. People came to the meetings with a greater knowledge base this year than I had seen in previous years. So I am proud of that. I am so proud of the directors who took a really tough look at their departmental budgets, making very difficult cuts this year. I am so proud of the teachers who helped inform the directors and who will carry out good work regardless of where cuts are made. And I am so proud of the trustees. Our budget books are, I don't know how many, it's got to be at least 1,000 pages, going line by line. I am so proud that we've gotten to this place where we are going to present a budget that balances real financial constraints with this community's values. So I thank everybody, and I look forward to the next several weeks where we will again go out into the community and help communicate and inform what this vote means, what this budget means for this district and for our children. And I look forward to being able to answer any questions like we always do for our community, so that they get accurate information about what this all means. So thank you. Any other questions or comments before we move on? All right. All in favor? All right, thank you very much. Now, action 13, the approval of the property tax report card. The property tax report card is made available to all local newspapers and is included in North Shore's adopted budget package. It includes the budget, estimated tax levy, the student enrollment. It includes 2 years of reserve balances. So tonight it's on our agenda to approve along with the adoption of the budget. Is there a motion? Okay, second. Any questions and comments?
Just a quick logistical question. These by Friday, these will all be filed for all districts?
It's required to be filed within, yes, because most of the districts are either approving tonight or on Thursday. So
Okay.
within 24 hours, it has to be filed at New York State Control.
Okay, so we'll know that where our 1.91% stacks up. That'll be public information soon enough.
That's correct, yes.
That's my only question. Thank you.
Other questions? All right, all in favor? Comments from the public. I will now open the public comments. Anyone has anything they'd like to say, name and town of residence? Being none, I will now close public comments and we will move on. Action 16, A through D. Is there a motion? Okay, thank you. I know we have two retirements actually.
We do indeed have 2 retirements, and I just want to congratulate Mr. Eric Lepetit, veteran French teacher here at North Shore High School and sometimes at North Shore Middle School, who really has led the French program for many, many years, with a couple other colleagues, and has provided that opportunity, been a part of trips over the years, and has just been a great educator for students who have made that choice, as opposed to Spanish or some of the other languages, and they've maintained that great opportunity, that classical opportunity for our North Shore students. So thank you, Mr. Lepetit, for everything you've done for North Shore High School and our North Shore World Language program. And also Ms. Darlene Skay, who was one of the first people that I ever met in the North Shore schools in 2009. She'd been here for several years, and we worked on curriculum together that first summer. She's just a true innovator, always claiming her own education, learning, an expert in technology, and so invested in the professional learning of her fellow colleagues. She serves as the Teachers Union's chair of professional learning, and works with us on the professional learning committee with Dr. Smythe as well. It's been a great partner. So we will miss you both. And like I always say, it's always super hard to find the caliber of the people who are making the decision to retire. It's always a challenge to find people of this high quality. So thank you both.
Any other questions, comments? All right, all in favor? Thank you. Action 17, I'm going to do 17, 18, and 19. So 17 is approval of exam review instructors, 18 is approval of the piano accompanist, and 19 is the acceptance of a donation from the North Shore Women's Club. Is there a motion?
Yeah.
Okay, questions, comments? Thank you for the donation, $1,500 for the high school international music tour. All in favor? Thank you. Action 20, the adoption of the policy, which is our homebound instruction policy. And I'm going to take that with 21A through D, which is our approval of change orders, and 22A through C, which is our approval of health service agreements. Motion. Second. Okay. Questions, comments?
Only four of us. You really got to be quick with
It's
these
very
motions.
awkward tonight. I gotta tell you, it's very awkward. I don't know. I'm feeling off with the imbalance of people. Okay. Questions, comments? Nothing. All in favor? All right. Very good. Hey, look where that got us. Unfinished business.
You
All
have
right.
two quick questions. Number one, the state, you mentioned the state aid inflation rate that will potentially be, they're going to be adjusting. Not that it matters because we're so far from the cap, but would that affect their cap, or is that not part of that equation?
No, it would affect the amount of aid we
Okay.
would receive. The
Got it.
original formula before it was changed by the governor was 4.1%. If they'd used the
Is the CPI.
right.
And the CPI, of course, does factor in our cap. If it's
Yes, it would. The lesser of, so yes.
got it. That's why I wanted to clarify.
Rumor is the number is around 2.8 that they were going to use, but that has not been made official.
Okay.
Yeah, so lower than the current CPI.
But higher than her
Correct.
initial budget, which
That's
was
right.
2.1 or 2. It was 2.4. So it's only not even 0.5% higher, but somewhat. Okay.
All right, I had
Yeah,
two.
go ahead.
Second one is just a comment. I'm loving the new sign outside the high school. Just a comment. I just want to make sure, and I don't know if very well maybe, that it's used to highlight all the achievements that we're getting, like the young man who won the carpentry contest, the Key Club, the athletes, the best community for arts education, but also used to pull people into our events. One of the beauties of the sign, certainly pulling people into sporting events, but also there was a fantastic jazz concert last week, and there were some empty seats. I don't know how many folks who don't have kids in the school know about that, but it'll be a great idea if on that sign it was publicized. So I just want to use the publicized events to bring people from the community who are taxpayers who may not use the schools on a daily basis the opportunity for free, I'm just going to say world-class entertainment, because that jazz concert was stellar. Like I'm still humming things I didn't even, songs I didn't know. So that's my only comment.
I was just going to say, I think that was something that also came up when the PCA presidents were meeting, or the Parent Teacher Association, right? They had the same kind of suggestions.
Right.
Great minds think alike. Right?
No, we're talking about the sign. The sign to the left of it as it goes into the faculty parking lot. I've been meaning to tell you, someone could take a look at that one.
Yeah, we actually did discuss this a little bit on the walkthrough,
Yeah.
and we have the sign in the island still when you enter the high school. So we are talking about what we can do, like the rusted sign that was donated. Was it? I forget the year that's listed on that sign, but And the fence along Glen Cove Avenue, there are a few things there that we're looking at.
It's come a long way.
Yeah, yeah. But it's come a long way too because people have been pointing certain things out, and you're so responsive to it. And John Hall has been busy with it, so that's great.
It's not a switch as we flipped and everything is
No.
perfect, but we're moving in the right direction. As the students are appreciating it more, even little things like the walkway on the angle in front of the Victorian house, like it's just little improvements make a lot of difference to these kids. So
Something on that just reminds me of one. There was quite some time ago. There was discussion about putting up a "Welcome to Glenhead" sign on the middle school property,
Yes.
and I'm wondering where that was. And as related to that, there is an existing by the same token, a "Welcome to Seacliff" sign on the other side, incredibly hidden, right along the driveway of middle schools. So I'm just wondering. I mean, it's not up to us. I guess it's up to Seacliff. But
Yeah, it's coming from the village, or in this case, the
Right.
civics. I have to say, so we've been talking to Mr. Pumbar, who's been really collaborative with this, because there were a couple of options we were looking at, and we didn't feel as good about it, and they were just very open to. We found now, I think the location will be closer to Cassam Lane on that corner.
I just wonder. I don't know if it's appropriate, but I wondered if I guess maybe it's really for a resident of Seacliff to maybe speak to the village trustees to point out that Seacliff sign is virtually non-existent because it's so faded, it's so hidden, and maybe they want to do a similar effort working with the school district
Yeah, and I would want that to come from them.
from them.
Yeah.
Of course.
But
yeah.
they could certainly. you
But
know,
I'm glad that Mr. Pumbar's association is finding a mutually beneficial location.
Yeah, no,
Great.
they've been great.
Any other unfinished business? I will now move to new business. Yes.
A couple of things that just came up within this meeting that I was thinking about. So when Paul was talking about the lab and the things, I was just curious, is this the first time you were hearing that?
No.
Okay, okay.
I will say we have explored over the years many different options for the science research facility. One option was the Victorian. A new science lab was an alternate in the current bond proposal, and we did have public discussions about that. I remember because we were in the high school library, and it would have been like right behind where the board sat. So we have been talking about that. The Victorian was an issue because the students would have to cross, and so the location of where it is, even though it's a small room, it's very convenient. So, and that then led to that bond work, and so we have to, I think, continue to think about another option.
I was just thinking when he said they didn't have a sink, I was just thinking of all those temporary sinks we had during COVID. Do we still have any of those, or?
Believe we do, but the square footage in the science research room is really hard to, I do want to go with Mr. Mitchell and Dr. Smythe. We're going to be doing walkthroughs with each of the directors, so we'll spend some time there and just kind of get a visual.
And now that you mention, I do remember talking about him, but when he said it, I didn't. And then my only other issue is I was just happy to see in your update that the administrators are reading The Anxious Generation. And there's so much press now about cell phones it's on the news every day about cell phones in schools and screen time. And so I'm definitely really excited to hear what the technology committee is going to suggest. And, if reading this book changes anything, in our district. So I just want to say I'm excited to hear about, any new updates to any, proposed policy changes, things like that.
We were scheduled to, just so the public knows, to have a technology committee report. We tabled that because we had to move some meetings around. We will have a report for the board before the end of the school year. And we're adding other topics like AI. It's something that Mr. Contreras, the high school librarian, are talking about. The Tri-State Consortium Spring Conference is focused on AI. And AI is in such a different place this May than it was last May. I mean, that's the nature of AI. So there's a lot to discuss there, and districts and high schools are all over the place. So one thing we talked about is maybe an internal district, like Dr. Smythe has this great model district literacy team, maybe a district instructional technology team that really continues to focus on the work with teachers and librarians especially.
Any other new business? Okay, look, this is before 9 o'clock. What are you marking it as, Betty? Okay, look.
That clock is very accurate. Let's do
Everyone,
it.
everyone's go straight home. This is highly unusual. So let's enjoy it tonight. Okay. I will now adjourn the meeting and everyone have a nice spring break.
Thank you.
Thank you.